The Thing by John Carpenter, 1982. I love this fucking movie. I loved it from the moment I first laid eyes on the opening scene. Tense, engaging, fucking action-packed, mysterious. Why the hell is this happening? The Thing is a 1982 body. It's kind of a body horror. Like, there's lots of gore and stuff happening to bodies, I guess, human beings, or aliens pretending to be human beings, in this movie. Where do I even start? I mean, for one, it's a horror film. I love horror films. And two, it's actually another childhood favourite. I watched this movie when I was very young. Obviously, I couldn't tell really what was going on. I was kind of just half paying attention to the main story and keeping my focus on all the violence. And I rewatched it very recently, about 5 times. And I would go as far as to say that this is definitely one of my favourite movies of all time. It is in the top 10 for the best, not just horror movies, but one of the best movies I've ever seen. I prefer it to The Shining, which is another landmark, amazing horror movie. I prefer it to the Saw movies, which are famous for their violence and psychological elements, but are not particularly good films. And I much prefer it to like more tense, mysterious mystery stuff like Silence of the Lambs. This is my favourite horror movie of all time for a myriad of different reasons. I'm just sort of going to list off everything I love about this movie with no clear structure. I might spoil a few things here and there, but that's basically been the first videos on this channel, so whatever. Everything I love about this movie, I don't even really need to think about it. I just need to figure out what I'm going to say first. Well, first of all, the special effects are beautiful. Keep in mind, this is way before CGI was, like, feasible for such feats in film. Like, everything in this film is practical. Everything. From exploding buildings to helicopters, which are very fun to watch, to actors like being in horrible cold weather with big coats on that still aren't keeping them that much more warm. And, well, the main aspect of the film, the Thing itself. The practical effects for the Thing itself in this movie are fucking amazing. The Kennel Thing, the Palmer Thing, the Norris Thing, like, even the Bennings Thing, and the split face thing with the weird head that's going up and the other head that's attached to it that's slightly further back, like, ah! The scene where Bennings is being simulated. Every single scene in this movie is fucking amazing. Every scene with a monster in it. Like, the practical effects are so gruesome and grisly. Like, the actors on set actually felt sick to their stomachs, so all their reactions are genuine to these horrific monsters that they're shooting at and burning with flamethrowers and being attacked by and horrifically mutilated by. Like, it's amazing. All the practical effects in this film are beautiful. I love that they're all practical. That's one of the things that I love about movies like this. Secondly, the directing. John Carpenter clearly knew what he wanted and what he was doing with this film. Very cleverly, he cut a lot of stuff out of this film that really didn't need to be there, which only made it like a million times better. Like, lots of extended dialogue and a scene where a character gets not actually assimilated by and fused with, but gets stabbed in the neck by one of the people who's actually an alien. That doesn't make any sense, right? He knew what he was doing, he knew what he wanted. All the acting is amazing. You can tell that he gave a very clear direction for this movie to go in. Like, he's brilliant. John Carpenter, legendary. Horror zone, anything. Like, it's just good. The music in this film is eerie as hell. It's creepy. It really sets the tone. It really makes it clear what the movie is about and what's going to happen. Like, one thing about horror movies is score is very important. You have to have a good score to make these movies even remotely convincing, at least for me. If you don't have good music, then there's no point. Or if you don't have music at all, you know, like, that could work, but this movie needed the score. It needed the music. And there are actually moments where there is no music. All the sound is coming from what's happening in the scene, with either men screaming or the monster making howling noises. Sometimes there are scenes like, for example, when the Palmer thing attacks, there's no music. It's just men screaming and the monster growling. But in some scenes, because like I said, this film is 80s, like it's quite 80s. The music has like a very strong aesthetic. Like there's lots of, but it's really eerie and laid out. And the guy who did the score, I forget his name, but he did a fantastic job. I think maybe John Carpenter did it. I mean, he's a composer. He's done some scores. Whoever did the score, brilliant. Absolutely fantastic. Now, with all of that, the main thing for me is definitely the acting. The actors bring this movie to life. They actually convince me that this is like a horrific scenario that's completely possible. Like, people getting trapped in an Antarctic. Like, those actors were genuinely cold. Like, they were actually freezing out there. It was like the middle of Alaska in low temperatures. Like, they were in some genuine suffering. Like I said, when they were looking at those effects, like, they felt ill looking at those things. They were horrified, you know? And also, interesting fact about this film is even though they knew that one of them was going to end up being an alien, they didn't actually know when specifically. Like, John Carpenter never actually made it clear who was what at what time. Any of them could have been assimilated and been an alien at any time. We never know. And obviously 30 years later, they can like explain that stuff to us in like interviews and whatnot, and DVD commentaries, but at the time, it was kind of hard to tell. Like, all we knew was that the dog went into someone's bedroom in the evening, and, well, it must have done something to them, because the last thing we saw was them turn around, like, and we just saw their shadow. We didn't see who it was. We didn't know who was what. That's what I love about this movie. It's very tense. It is suspenseful. It's not just violent for the sake of being violent. It's actually a very good movie. I think, in my opinion, Kurt Russell gives his best performance in this film. This is the best thing he's ever done. Like, for any Overboard or any Big Trouble in Little China or any Guardians of the Galaxy 2, this, for me, will always be the Kurt Russell performance. He is the ultimate badass in this movie. He's the perfect protagonist. And The Thing is the perfect antagonist for someone like him. Like, you know. And in terms of, like, script writing, like, dialogue, this film is actually very good. Like, you believe what the characters are saying. They make the dialogue work. All the arguments seem genuine. All the, like, quips that they do. Like, as I said in my It review, there's a scene where Palmer looks at the Norris Spiderhead and he goes, "You gotta be fucking kidding." And at the end, when McCready, Kurt Russell's character, kills the Thing, the last thing he says to it is, "Yeah, fuck you too!" And he fucking blows it up. This movie is awesome. It's an action movie, it's a horror movie, it's a bit of a comedy, there's some funny lines. Palmer, in particular, is hilarious. The guy who played him did a great job. And what I like about this movie is with its characters is it actually makes you care about them, which not a lot of horror movies are very good at nowadays. Like, I didn't give a shit about anyone in, for example, Unfriended. Like, who cares? They're a bunch of selfish arseholes. Like, I hope they die. But I didn't want anyone to die in this movie. Like, obviously it was going to happen, that's the point of the film, but I wanted everyone to be alive. Even Clark, who they make out to be the Thing, at the end of the day, he was just a kind of weird guy who liked dogs, you know? He didn't want to be attacked or assimilated, and he wasn't, but everyone thought he was, and that was really sad. I felt sorry for Clark. I felt sorry for Gary. I felt sorry for Copper. I felt sorry for McCready when they locked him out in the cold because they thought he was one of those things. I even felt sorry when a selfish, like, irresponsible, loud arsehole like Windows was attacked and viciously mauled. Like, the film actually made me care about him. And the actor, Thomas Waits, I think his name is, did a great job. Like, he really sold that character. Everyone did. Keith, what's his name, really sold Charles. The guy who played Palmer really sold him. I believe that they were their characters. They did a great job. I do have some minor criticisms with this movie that I don't actually take points off of for. But basically, the only problems I have with this movie is Not the special effects. They are up to date. Like, I believe every monster in the thing. Even the scene where McCready has the dish and he does the blood test, it's like that still holds up. It could look really stupid and lame. It could be obviously cut, but I didn't even notice a cut. That was just a genuinely good practical effect. I want to know how they did it. It was amazing. Um, it's mainly to do with characters, actually, despite how amazing they are. For example, T.K. Carter plays a character called Knowles, who's like a cook who listens to Stevie Wonder and rolls around on rollerblades. Um, he's basically just a black stereotype for the first half of the movie. For the first 40 minutes, he's just the black guy. Like, it isn't until a bit later when he actually gets a clear character. Like, he talks in a very typical accent. Like, he always says specific words that, like, in the 60s you might expect a black person to say. I just thought that was kind of distracting, but I still liked Knowles as a character. I quite enjoyed T.K. Carter's performance. I thought he did a great job. Interesting enough, Knowles actually survived quite long. I was expecting them to just kill him off at one point, but he actually made it, like, a decent way through the movie, and I appreciate that. And Charles, like, the black guy actually lived at the end. Like, him and McCready, the only survivors. They let the black guy live, basically. I think that's worth a spoiler. That was very special, especially for the 80s. And then there's Norris. Now, people don't really talk about this, but I don't really get or like Norris as a character. I thought the actor who played him did a great job, but it was only for what Norris was there for. Like, he barely said anything. He didn't really have, like, a clear, defined personality. He was just, like, a geologist. Like, he was a smart guy. And that's fine. It does actually kind of work in the movie a little bit, but it just did kind of distract me, because you have all these characters who are, like, really well developed, and then you kind of just have Norris, who's just, like, the geek, But interestingly enough, I do think that him being revealed as a thing was actually kind of cool, because no one suspected him. They just told him to do a bunch of shit, and he just did it. Like, they didn't even realize. So, sucks for them, I guess. Yeah, those are the only problems I have with the film, and even then they're very minor, and they kind of just get overshadowed by everything else, which is amazing. And even then, they kind of blend into the movie, which just shows how genius John Carpenter, and he didn't write the screenplay, the guy who wrote the script. It just shows how amazing they are at what they were doing, and how they knew what they were doing. And yeah, definitely check it out. Not even if you're just a horror fan. Even if you hate horror movies, I think you can still watch this and appreciate just how well made it is. It is a genuinely good movie. I love it. I'm going to give The Thing a 10 out of 10. Like, it deserves it. It is one of the greatest movies ever made, in my opinion. Not just horror. Yeah, a true classic. So, yeah. Laters.